I guess as well, on a personal level, I want to show my children, I want to set an example for my kids. I want them to see that they're, sorry, I want them, sorry.
You're an amazing example. You're an amazing example for your kids, Jo.
Yeah,
You're an amazing woman.
I want them to see that cancer might have hijacked my life, but it hasn't crippled me. Like, I'm still a strong woman, and I'm fighting this with every ounce of my breath, and I'm doing the best I can in a really shit situation. And, I'm trying to be the best parent I can, and just try and live my best life while I'm living, and do it with a smile and, with strength. I've got stage 4 bowel cancer. We're going to talk about everything from my diagnosis to treatment and how things are going right now. Talk about the things that people might be curious or want to hear but are too frightened to ask.
That's Jo McKenzie-McLean, and I'm Colleen O'Hanlon. We've been mates and colleagues at Stuff for 20 years. Since her diagnosis, Jo's been incredibly open about her illness on social media, and in this podcast, she wants to go further.
So I'm just hoping that what we do here can just help people who are on that journey, whether they've got cancer or not, and make them feel that, that they're not alone.
I'm going to be with Jo every step of the way. There will be tears and laughter. She'll also offer practical insights, support and hope. This then is the story of Jo versus cancer. Hi Jo.
Hi Colleen.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Great. All right, so today, last time we sat opposite each other, we talked a lot about the relationships in your life and the impact of cancer on them. Today, we're recording the final episode of this series, and we're going to really focus on wrapping things up. And we're going to talk a bit about the future in terms of some practical things you're going to plan, and we're going to kind of revisit the rationale for you in recording this podcast. So before we move much further, I thought we could maybe touch quite simply on some of the practical considerations you have with regards to your future, whatever that may be. Is that forefront of your mind?
Initially it wasn't, but pretty quickly I had some people sort of talk to me about what I've got in place if the worst happened. And I mean, I guess when I made the first call to a lawyer, she said to me that she was quite reassuring and said, look, everyone needs to have these things in place, whether you've got cancer or not. So that was the first thing in my head that I was like, okay, calm down.
It's a good piece of life admin to do no matter what.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I freaked out. I mean, I've got a will. I sorted out a will really late after I got separated, but it's a very basic one. And I was a little bit head in the sand about what I would need to do for a will, if something doesn't go my way. And it just seemed really overwhelming. I was like, what do I do? I am, it just seemed like there was a lot of things to consider. I'm at home with my kids.
You're a single parent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, should I, because you have to think about your children into the future. I don't know if I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years left of my life. So it's almost like I had to consider, okay, what happens if I die? When
all of those eventualities.
Yeah. And so it's been really tricky. And I've had a good lawyer who's helped me make some decisions around having people in place to represent the interests of my children, discussing things like a family trust.
Yep.
So, I've been in the process of putting my house into a trust, and I've put one of my best friends on that.
Is she like an executor?
Yeah, and just to kind of I wanted to keep my parents outside of, I didn't want them to be burdened with any financial responsibility with the kids. I wanted, say, for example, say if I died in 2 years and say my kids want $5,000 for something, I don't know.
Yep.
They go to her for all of that.
Yep.
She will be in charge of liaising with my ex-husband for any kind of big financial decisions. So I thought that was quite a good thing to do.
Yeah, especially because your parents, no matter the outcome for you personally, your parents will play a huge part of your children's life, right? So, and it's been a reasonably rough road for them, well, a very rough road for them, even in the last couple of years. So I guess that idea of taking an administrative kind of part of their future off their plate seems like a really not a good one.
I want them to be there to help nurture my children and be there for my kids in my place. I want them to be there to give that love and support and care, and I want them to focus on that, and I don't want them to be stressed with other really administrative
and potentially quite difficult decisions in future, right? Money can be a difficult topic for people to discuss, so I feel like that's a really sensible thing to do.
It was really stressful. And to get that done it felt like such a burden lifted. Like I did feel quite, oh God.
Was it expensive? Is the cost of sorting out your affairs?
It was like a couple of grand.
Yeah, right. Which is, it's not nothing, is it? I guess it's one of those, we've talked a bit before about, you're obviously paying a lot of money for your drugs and treatment and transport and all those various things, but it just seems like another thing. I mean, we all have to do it, but, if you're putting all your, dollars and cents into treatment plan, it's not an insignificant cost, I guess. But it is a good thing to do.
It's also ongoing.
Yes.
Because I'm still working with lawyers with life insurance, help with life insurance policies and potential claims. I have some policies there that I am looking to have to draw on to help fund my drugs.
Yep.
So the lawyers are helping me do all that. And that's obviously costing money.
Yeah,
and
sounds
whatnot.
really hard to do.
My brain, and when you're going through cancer treatment and trying to deal with everything, it's really a job that I'm quite happy to say to the lawyers, please can you take this?
Outsource it. Well, I mean, isn't that interesting though? Because one of the things, when I've been aware of your cancer battle and, the pathway you're on, I never would have thought about the legals of it, in terms of having somebody just even try and get access to life insurance and that kind of thing, I don't know. It seems like in a health battle they're not necessarily two things that go naturally hand in hand, right?
Yeah, and try throw an ex-husband in the mix.
I identify.
Because, I've had to involve him.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We've had to have some conversations around what the future could look like, and that's been really tough as well, having to sit down with him and just talk about our children's future. And, that's been heartbreaking for me to have to...
Of course, and also it's maybe, by nature of being separated or divorced, it's not the most naturally communicative relationship in your life. Just to talk about those very personal and intimate things with somebody where communication maybe is difficult anyway must be really, really, taxing.
And some of those questions that we have, I don't yet have the answers to, so things about money and what happens to my house, will I rent it, will they sell it? Initially I was like, you can't sell the family home, like this is where the kids, this is their home, this is their stability. And then my mum's like, well, do you think the kids will see that home as a home with you not there? Like,
are you the home?
Yeah, that's exactly what she said. You make the home, and do you think that keeping the home is going to be more painful than positive for them? And it might be better just to sell it and then have the money there for when they are older and need it, So I changed. Initially I was like, no, you can't sell the home. And now I'm kind of like, well, actually, I can see their point. So I just have to, I've basically said, well, you guys are going to have to make those decisions without me when I'm gone, and what's right for the kids is in your hands.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess depending, should that day come to pass, the age of the kids would, they might be old enough to advocate for an outcome too, so
True.
Yeah. So like that feels like a pretty heavy admin kind of task you've got to do, but a really important one.
I think it's good too to get done earlier rather than later.
Yes.
When your brain is engaged in the process, because I can see how easily it could get put off, and then you could potentially deteriorate quite quickly, and I'd hate for everything to be left unfinished, and that would be even worse. Like, it's just something you have to do, tick off that list and kind of just try and remove the emotion from it, and just think of it as something that you would do regardless of having cancer or not.
Yeah. And your time only gets more precious, right? So, that's another reason to use it now rather than later, I suppose.
Yeah.
So you've talked to me before about, and you've kind of, as you often do, make a joke about some of the tough things about your situation. And you've made casual kind of passing reference to having met your future embalmer, which, I have to say, there was a big fat lump in my throat, but I also really, I think your approach to those kind of topics really sums up who you are and how you're kind of facing this, huge fight head on. Is that something you'd feel like you could comfortably share with listeners?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Chronic oversharer. I'm happy to, talk about anything. But I didn't intentionally seek out my future embalmer. It kind of happened organically. It was just a bit weird. I'd been to a friend's funeral last year, and she was one of the funeral directors.
The embalmer?
She was the embalmer. Well, I presume she was the embalmer there. But before I got cancer, I was doing some celebrant work, weddings and funerals, and I had connected with her in that role, and we had worked together a bit, and we just really gelled. As she's a woman similar age to me, got children, and she had said to me, I don't know how you can stand up in front of all of those people and do that. And I was kind of like to her, well, I don't know how you can go into a room with a dead body and embalm them. I was in awe of her, and we just had this really cool sense of humour and mutual respect for each other. And I could tell that she was really passionate and sincere and just loved her job. And anyway, I ran into her at a friend's funeral, and I got home and I was thinking about it, and I thought, it's such a... I just had this vision of me lying kind of on this cold, horrible table dead, and it's such a...
It's a very intimate moment, really, in some ways, isn't it?
And it's kind of like... I wanted someone to look after my body who I knew. It sounds really strange, but I didn't want some creepy old man embalming my body. And a lot of funeral directors, no offence, seem like kind of creepy old men.
I don't know that that's weird, Jo, to want...
Sorry, that's so offensive. I don't mean that. There are lots of funeral directors out there who are, But I just, I'm going to be naked, and I'm going to be... It's really a private moment, and I want to
dignity.
Be looked after. I want to be cared for in death as
in life, yeah.
And my mum did a bit of a stint in a funeral home, which was an interesting career sort of diversion for her for a little bit. And I know just from that experience how important that part is, and I think mum will probably be part of that process if it did happen. But I really just felt this desire to have Jodie be my embalmer, so I messaged her.
Just casually on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook messaged her and said, oh, hey Jodie, it was lovely catching up at the funeral today.
Hey girl!
Just wondering, this is a bit of a weird request, but if things go bad for me, I don't suppose you would be my embalmer. And she was like, yeah, you're right, I've never had a request like that, but it would be my absolute privilege to do that for you. So again, a bit like I kind of felt a bit of a relief, and I was like, if things go bad, and I know that I'm going to be in really caring hands, and that she will be respectful, and and
Jo, that means a lot to you now, but should that awful day come, that will always also mean an enormous amount to your family. You know, and I think that's a really, in some odd way, it's a really lovely thing that you've been able to arrange.
Yeah, and I think just having, a little bit of control, and again, not leaving things to other people to decide. It's something that is my wish for my body.
Yeah.
That sounds so weird to say, but yeah. It's a little bit like, my funeral plan. I haven't done anything really on that, which is one of my...
It's on your to-do list.
It's on my to-do list, is my funeral plan. And I joked with my friend Glenn about he's been doing a few funerals, and and we had a wee conversation about it the other day, and I said, oh, you're good, but not as good as what I would be. And I said, actually, I might just do my own officiating for my own funeral, and so I actually might. I might just do my own funeral. I don't know. Like, who knows? I'll get a videographer in and be on the big screen. I like to have the last word.
I think it's a very normal thing to think about that, because in some ways it's the last way in which you could communicate with your loved ones, really, right? And I guess depending on what your beliefs might be, etc. But I think the idea that you can play an active part in that kind of celebration of your life is pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, I haven't done it yet, so we'll see how I go.
Keep thinking about music. So, Jo, we're at the end of the final episode, and I think it's a really good time for us to, revisit why you set out on this journey in the first place. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay, well, firstly, if there was a mirror in the room, people would see for themselves what a journey this has been, recording this podcast, because I look terrible.
There's been tears, but laughter too, right?
Yeah, it's been emotional, and I hope that listeners have really listened to the podcast and are taking something away from it, because I guess, a few months ago I was cleaning up my desk and I came across a letter that I'd written as a 16-year-old to my future self, and in it, amongst a lot of teenage, drama, I had written that as an adult I had wanted to be doing something worthwhile with my life. I'd said, I hope you are making a difference somehow. And, with having cancer, I read that and I thought, this is a way that I can actually make a difference. I've got the unique perspective, I guess, of being a journalist, so I look at things differently. I ask questions. I have travelled from day one on this journey looking, at the health system through a journalist's eye, not just a patient's eye, and really absorbed everything, and been quite shocked about some of the things that I've encountered in terms of, equity and drug funding, things that I did not have a clue about. Things, even just chemotherapy treatment, side effects from chemotherapy. I had no idea about cancer, really. My nana had cancer, my uncle had cancer, but really it hadn't touched me that intimately. I feel quite guilty that I never really paid more attention to what they were going through. But when you were faced with it, when I was faced with it, it opened up a whole other world to me that I had no idea existed. And the more I started talking about it to people and writing stories about it, and the response from strangers that I got, the response from family and friends who started thanking me for talking about things that they had perhaps wondered about or, didn't have the voice to, they had the same concerns as me, but they didn't have the platform to speak about it. So, it's really given me that motivation and inspiration to talk about it as much as I possibly can, because it just really doesn't get talked about that much. We all hear about cancer. There's cancer stories every day in the paper, but, just getting down to that really kind of nitty-gritty level, I don't know, just that some of those little things that I've encountered that I thought, actually, who knew that, you didn't always lose your hair having chemotherapy? Who knew you went through chemopause? Who knew that you could pop out in pussy acne spots if you went on one treatment? And who knew that Cancer Society was there, that could, they don't just bring around cups of coffee and talk about cancer. They actually can provide advocacy and they can help with transport. They've helped do my garden. There's just so many things in this cancer space that doesn't get talked about, that, I guess by doing the podcast, I've just wanted to open some of those doors, start conversations, hopefully, raise awareness about some inequities that I've faced, that other people face, and, importantly, raise awareness that young people like me can get cancer, that it shouldn't be, young people shouldn't be dismissed by the GP so quickly. It really needs to be, concerns need to be taken seriously, and the more diagnostic testing that becomes available, the better, it will save lives. That needs to be improved. There's just this podcast could go on forever probably about things that it's thrown up, or, things that we haven't been able to cover. But, I've done my best with you, with your help, to try and, cover some of these things. And I guess as well on a personal level, I want to show my children, I want to set an example for my kids. I want them to see that they're, I want them,
You're an amazing example. You're an amazing example for your kids, Jo.
Yeah,
You're an amazing woman.
I want them to see that cancer might have hijacked my life, but it hasn't crippled me. Like I'm still a strong woman, and I'm fighting this with every ounce of my breath, and I'm doing the best I can in a really shit situation. And, I'm trying to be the best parent I can, and just try and live my best life while I'm living, and do it with a smile and, with strength. So...
Well, Jo, it has been a roller coaster, but there's been lots of smiles. And I feel like, it's been a privilege to be on the journey with you, but I feel, having observed you and your kids yesterday, I feel like you can tick all those boxes. The relationship we have with your kids is amazing. I feel, you're an enduring presence in their life.
Thanks. I love you.
I love you too.
God, is that enough? Fucking hell.
You've been listening to Jo versus Cancer with Jo McKenzie-McLean and me, Colleen O'Hanlon. We know our conversations might be a tough listen, whether you've got cancer or you're caring for somebody who has. There's lots of support available, and there's information in the show notes. This is a Stuff podcast produced by Chris Reed. You can listen to the full series at stuff.co.nz or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Kia kaha, be strong.